call the meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission, January 17th, 2013. At this time, we'll ask Ms. Barber to call the roll, please.
Jim Bledsoe.
Here.
William Brown.
Here.
Harold Cannon.
Here.
Bill Cox.
Here.
Jeff Griggs.
Here.
Jeff McMillan. Here. Tom Rice.
Here.
Jim Ripley. Julie Schuster.
Here.
Clayton Stout. James Stroud.
Here.
Trey Teague.
Here.
Jamie Woodson.
Okay, thank you. Director Carter, do you have any announcements at this time, or we go ahead and go into the agenda?
Your permission, I'll hold those for a little bit later.
Okay, thank you. We're going to change the agenda around just a little bit, but before we do that, let me welcome everyone in the audience. My name's William Brown, and I'm chairman of the commission this time. If you're here and want to discuss some matters with the commission, I'll ask you to come to the center of the room, front center, where the microphone is. State your name and your purpose for being here, what the subject is that you want to address the commission about. Also, if you would, hold your comments until the subject matter which you're here about is being discussed among the commission. In other words, if it has to do with fisheries, we would like for you to come up during the time that the Fisheries Committee is addressing their part of the agenda, wildlife, etc. Please make your comments relevant to the subject matter that we're dealing with, and try not to be repetitious. If there's several people here about the same subject, if you would have one or two people speak on your behalf, that will save time for the commission. This is the committee day, and actually tomorrow will be the entire commission meeting where the commission will vote on any matters that are passed on today's committee meeting hearing. So at this time, I'm going to go to the Fisheries Committee and Commissioner McMillan.
Thank you, Chairman Brown. I'm going to ask Bobby Wilson to come up and make a presentation.
Thank you, Commissioners. Actually, I want to introduce the speaker to make the presentation on the Lake Sturgeon is Jason Henniger, and Jason works out of the Fisheries Management Division office here, and he's been employed with us since April of 2008, and he's over the Streams and Rivers program, and I'm going to let him talk to you about the Lake Sturgeon, and then I'll be back to address any questions, or Jason can after his presentation.
Thank you, Commissioners, for entertaining my presentation today. I'll be talking to you about the reintroduction of lake sturgeon into Tennessee and the management plan that we have in place for that reintroduction. Lake sturgeon, Accipenser fulvescens, is a member of the Accipensidae family and are known as living fossils. These fish have been found in fossil records up to 140 million years ago, and are known as one of the oldest fish species in Tennessee. They are very large fish species, very slow growing and long lived. They mature, they become reproductive at 15 to 20 years, and once they are mature, they only reproduce every 4 to 5 years after that. They do not reproduce every year. They grow up to 9 feet long and can reach weights of 300 pounds, live up to 150 years. Some of the causes of decline of lake sturgeon was overfishing, and here's some data from TVA on the Tennessee River in Alabama, and the last commercial catch was seen in 1961. You can see it kind of peaked out in 1957 with about 170,000 pounds of lake sturgeon being harvested that year. We hear reports of anglers here in Tennessee catching lake sturgeon up into the 50s and 60s. The last sturgeon on the Tennessee River was seen late 60s, and then there was 2 sturgeon reported in a fish kill here in Nashville early 1970s. Talked to a gentleman today that reported a catch from Watts Bar on December 8th, and he said he had seen 2 lake sturgeon in his lifetime. The one he caught on December 8th and one his father caught and they ate when he was about 4 years old in the 50s. So there was also just fisherman harvest of lake sturgeon, not just commercial harvest. So these 2 photos here, these fish were caught out of the Cumberland River, and the bottom photo is in front of Lebanon Meat Market in the 1920s. So just gives you an idea of the size of the fish that they were catching that time in the Cumberland River. Another cause for decline was the construction of hydroelectric dams by TVA and Corps of Engineers through the 1940s up into the 70s, and a lot of the water pollution issues that come with those, low DO, cold water discharges, the blockage of migration routes for lake sturgeon to run upstream and spawn, and then also water pollution from industry and municipalities at that time was pretty bad as well. The Clean Water Act, 1972, cleaned a lot of that up and improved habitat for lake sturgeon and other species. TVA went through reservoir improvement projects in the 80s, and Douglas Dam, a lot of the projects that there to improve DO in the discharge. They put in venting turbines, oxygen bubbling units in the forebay of the reservoir. A lot of that happened between 1988 and 1993. With that habitat, they saw habitat improvements in the first 5 years, and a lot of the fish and invertebrate species began to return. And at that time, biologists thought it might be feasible to reintroduce sturgeon into the French Broad and the Holston Rivers. In 1995, the Tennessee Lake Sturgeon Working Group was formed. Tennessee Wildlife Resources took the lead on that working group, and then was partnered by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and other partners along the way. And their goal was to reestablish lake sturgeon in Tennessee. It began with the developing a hatchery production program. 4 of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service hatcheries began to produce lake sturgeon in 1998. They went to Wolf River in Wisconsin, collected eggs, brought them back to Warm Springs Hatchery in Georgia, and began producing lake sturgeon. They also developed an Upper Tennessee River Lake Sturgeon Management Plan, and that encompassed the area below Cherokee Reservoir, Douglas Reservoir, down to Watts Bar Dam. It was essentially Fort Loudon Reservoir. In that plan, they recognized that this was going to be a long-term effort. It would take at least 20 years of restocking and 5 years of monitoring at that time. It was last updated in 2006, and 7 is finalized in 2007, and we're currently undergoing a revision now of that plan. Some of the management goals in that plan was to restore a self-sustaining population of lake sturgeon into its historic range in Tennessee. Essentially remove that species from the state endangered list. We also wanted to use the best available science to manage for a future recreational fishery. We wanted to establish this fish back to the point where we can have recreational harvest of this species similar to what they do in the north and out west for white sturgeon. Ensure long-term population viability. We want this to be self-sustaining population. Some of the measures of success that we look at in the plan is, of course, natural reproduction needs to be observed of this species. Population needs to contain at least 20 year classes of 15-year-old adults or greater. That puts this plan out to about 35 years if we have individuals from the very first stocking. All suitable habitat within the management unit will be occupied and accessible to lake sturgeon. Again, some level of recreational harvest can be supported. Natural recruitment observed at a level necessary to sustain the population, and an effective population size of at least 500 individuals. This is a measure of genetic diversity, and since we are pulling most of our individuals from the Wolf River and then also the Wisconsin River, we want to have a population that is genetically diverse enough to sustain this population long term. Okay, some of the actions we've went into the reintroduction of lake sturgeon. Like I said, in 1998, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service went to Wisconsin and secured eggs from Wisconsin DNR, and they brought those back to Warm Springs, and of those fish, they raised 41 sturgeon large enough to put radio tags in, and they released those fish early 2000 in cooperation with Tennessee Tech, and they looked at whether those fish were going to stay in the French Broad River or if they were going to leave the system immediately. They found out that those fish did stay in the system and felt like there was sufficient habitat there to support lake sturgeon. So later that year, they released 8,000 juvenile lake sturgeon. Since then, we have released over 120,000 lake sturgeon into Tennessee waters. About 100 of those have been in the Tennessee River and about 20,000 in the Cumberland since 2006. We continue to go to Wisconsin and secure lake sturgeon eggs, which are still to this day taken to Warm Springs, raised out to a fry, 1 or 2 inch fry, and then those are divided among 4 partners for grow out. This is a very labor intensive process. They require a lot of constant feeding to try to convert these fish over to commercial feed to make it economically feasible to raise large numbers of fish. Our goal when we go and secure brood stock in Wisconsin, we shoot for 5 females and 25 males to contribute to those eggs to maintain that genetic diversity. And you can see here we've done that all except for 3 years, 2001, 2007, and 2011. We just missed it by a few individuals there. Annually, we get anywhere from 45,000 to 95,000 eggs per year, and you can see here the best year stocking was 2005, and we had a little over 14,000 fish to put in the Tennessee River. Most of these fish are anywhere from 7 to 9 inches in length. We do grow some out. We have grown some out for the Cumberland River, upwards 16 to 20 inches, and then we've had some larger individuals that we've kept for specific studies that we've released at about 30, 36 inches. So the Cumberland River fish, we have released a larger number of large fish, and I'll show you later that I think we're seeing angler recaptures, catches sooner on the Cumberland River than we did on the Tennessee. When we release these fish, we remove a scute, which is one of the bony structures on the side of the fish, and this will not grow back. It allows us to mark fish by year class. That way we can tell what stockings have been successful and how many year classes fish we have out there. Some of the angler reporting, we've had over 230 confirmed reports to TWRA. This is a fish that was caught at the mouth of the Hiawassee River on Chickamauga Reservoir. When an angler catches a fish and reports it to us, we get the date he catches it, name, phone number, address, and we send them a certificate of appreciation that says, thank you for reporting the catch and release of lake sturgeon in Tennessee. This allows us to gather information on where this fish was caught, and size gives us an idea of how many people are actually catching some fish. So far, we've seen fish caught on the Tennessee River in the Knoxville area. Pellissippi Bridge is a real popular area for fishermen, and we get a lot of reports from that area. We've had one from Wilson Dam in Alabama, Kentucky Lake. Last year, there was a report from Kentucky Lake in Tennessee. On the Cumberland River, we've had reports as far up as Wolf Creek Dam in Kentucky and Barkley Reservoir in Tennessee, about a mile from the state line. Here's some of the angler reports since 2006. We started the program in 2006. We had someone report one from 2005 at that time. You see, we started stocking the Cumberland River in 2006. We started stocking the Tennessee in 2000, and really didn't get a whole lot of reports till 2007 on the Tennessee. We're getting steady reports, and I've already had 5 reports for this year in the last 2 weeks. So, monitoring. The working group for the prior to 2011, it was kind of a haphazard type of monitoring for sturgeon. It was more just part of our standard sampling that we would go into some of these areas and look for lake sturgeon using gill nets, electrofishing, and they adopted trot lines about 4 years ago as part of that sampling. But we'd only caught 5 lake sturgeon from 2000 to 2011, and most of this effort was concentrated in the riverine portions where we stocked these fish. And through some studies, movement studies at UT and Tennessee Tech, we found out that these fish move great distances throughout the year, and we started backing our sampling into the reservoirs. In November 2011, we were assisted by 2 commercial fishermen from Alabama that had fished Watts Bar and caught sturgeon in the past. And with their assistance, we standardized our gear to trot lines and relocated some of our sampling efforts, like I said, into the reservoirs, into some of the deeper pools, and we caught 34 sturgeon in a week. As I said, we standardized our lines 350 to 700 feet, 50 to 200 hooks, baited with buffalo, drum, and carp, and earthworms. The buffalo by far produced more fish than anything else, and each boat chose their own sites. We concentrated in areas with sand bottom adjacent to the navigation channel. Some of these fish were caught 30, 40 feet of water during the fall. We collected length, weight, location, depth, year class, and tissue samples. Those tissue samples were taken to Warm Springs and processed for the to look at the affected population and our genetic diversity. The lengths ranged anywhere from 25 to 44 inches, 3 to 18 pounds, and we had year classes from 99 to 2010. So we had individuals representing each year that we've stocked fish. So the tissue was used again for the genetic analysis, and all recaptures were pit tagged, so we can in the future look at population size through recaptures of those tagged individuals. Just looking at some of our the stocking sites are indicated here with the purple stars up in the upper reaches of the Tennessee River. Here's the capture sites. Most of the fish that we caught in the fall of 2011 were in Fort Loudon Reservoir, with some individuals in Watts Bar as well. In March of 2012, we attempted to do the same sample. We caught 8 lake sturgeon, 3 on trot lines. 1 was captured in a gill net while we were attempting to get sauger brood at Normandy Hatchery, and 4 was netted off the front of an airboat by myself. I had a angler report, bow fisherman report, that he was seeing lake sturgeon on the French Broad River at low flow, or at no flow at all, while bow fishing for buffalo and carp. And he offered for me to go along. I took a large dip net with me and was able to net 4 in about 30 minutes off the front of the boat. So and we had set 6 trot lines in the same area the night before. During the spring, they're doing something different. They're not feeding like they are in the fall. So fish are there. They're tough to sample sometimes. During the spring sample, we set lines throughout Fort Loudon and Watts Bar, cover a much larger area. And the four fish that we caught with trot lines were in the similar area to the previous fall in Fort Loudon. The 4 fish that I netted off the front of the airboat was in the Holston River, Nance's Ferry. And then we had the one below Watts Bar Dam in the gill net while our crew was collecting broodfish. We sampled again this past fall using trot lines and covering Fort Loudon, Watts Bar, Chickamauga, and we made it down to Nickajack this year as well. Fish range from 9 inches to 47 inches, 1.3 pounds to 18.5. We had year classes from 2001 to 2010, so you're still covering most of our stocking years there with this fall sample. Collected tissue samples again to better refine our genetic analysis, and then also recaptured or tagged all fish with pit tags. We had one recapture this fall, and it was in the same area from the day before, so we're not recapturing these fish over and over. Simply had one from the day before. 2012-13, we're updating the management plan. We're using all this new data of movement and our trot lining to reanalyze our study area. The original study area was the upper Tennessee from Fort Loudon Dam up. We found out that these fish move great distances and can move through the locks pretty easily, so we're adding management units to the management plan for this fish. We're updating our monitoring techniques, revising that, and standardizing a sample every fall, going out and looking for these fish. And then we continue to update our genetic data. Here's a slide. The original sample area was from Fort Loudon upstream. So we're adding this from Nickajack upstream as the Upper Tennessee Management Unit. The Middle Tennessee Management Unit, Alabama, has expressed interest in developing a management plan and beginning some stocking efforts in Alabama. Georgia has a current management plan. They're stocking the Coosa River. They've come up the last 2 or 3 years and been part of our management plan. Kentucky has started. Go ahead and we'll have the upper, middle, and lower Tennessee with fish starting to move into Kentucky Lake. That's going to be an area that we need to manage eventually for lake sturgeon. Kentucky, as I said, they started a stocking program about 3 or 4 years ago and expressed interest in developing sampling methods similar to ours. And like I said before, we're seeing some of our fish from Cordell Hull move up below Wolf Creek Dam. And then the lower Cumberland is what we'll manage from on the Tennessee side. We'll present their revised management plan to the working group and also TWRA for review, and at the meeting next week in Knoxville, and then all partners from other states and are invited to attend that meeting as well. Here's some of the angler pictures that we get and some of the outreach that we've done with the Lake Sturgeon program. This has been a really good program to pull in youth, and it really ties the kids into river ecology and gets them vested in what's out there swimming around. So if that's conclusion of my presentation, any questions, I'll entertain those.
Any questions from the commission? Yes, ma'am.
Are you having any evidence of reproduction?
Not yet. We're only about 12, 13 years into this, and they don't sexually mature till they're 14, anywhere from 14 to 20. So we're not seeing any evidence yet, but we're getting to that point where it's possible.
Are you gonna continue the spring studies? I know me and my son went with you this past spring, and you said most of your catches were in the fall, so.
We're gonna modify the spring studies to go into those shallow areas and look for fish. And if we can net them at that point, we will get the information we can off of them. But we're not gonna concentrate our efforts in the spring like we do in the fall. We have 9 or 10 boats running crews all week long during the fall, and that's
Concentrate your effort when you get
Yep.
the best results.
Yeah. Yeah, we invade Lenore City and try to catch as many as we can that week in the fall. So,
What is a pit tag?
a pit tag is a small tag it's a passive integrated tag, and it's a small tag that has a wire coil in there, and you take a wand that gives off an electromagnetic charge. It charges that tag, and then sends back a code that's stored on a microchip in there. And it does not have a battery, so it lasts forever. It just charges, sends the signal back, and we can individually mark fish with different codes. We know when that fish was stocked, when that fish was caught, and it gives us an idea of how many individuals our recaptures will give us an idea of how many individuals we have out there.
Do we have anglers that are targeting just that species when they're fishing, or?
Not yet. Most of the anglers are catfishing. A lot of the sauger fishermen catch them in the deep holes this time of year. Most of your blue cat fishermen are going to catch these. They're very similar in their habits.
Well, thank you, Jason, for your
Thank
hard
you.
work on this program. I appreciate it. I guess this time we're going to ask Director Carter to make a presentation on the Corps restrictions.
Thank you, Commissioner McMillan. That I don't have as much to report as I thought I would, in that the public meeting that was supposed to take place on Tuesday night was called because of weather. There will be one tonight up in Baxter, and Bobby Wilson is going to represent us there and give some prepared remarks. We have written letters. We've talked directly with the Corps and any number of fishermen. It's quite a hot issue for local fishermen, that at least those who are generally used to fishing below Corps dams. Still no real indication of anything that will change on TVA dams, but I have had calls from Boat US and from the National Marine Manufacturers Association from their Washington offices. Both organizations have engaged both congressionally and are working at that level up there with the Department of Defense and with some of the other liaisons that they work with in the other divisions. And they're also working locally, as with the boat show was here. And over the weekend, they prepared flyers that were handed out throughout the boat show to alert fishermen of what was going on. They've also worked with some of our personnel to try to further that cause. So don't really have a whole lot to tell you other than that in Tennessee. I will tell you the meeting that went on in Kentucky was very well attended. I think about 250 people, as well as at least one congressman, maybe two. There's some local political leaders there as well. Doesn't seem to be any movement from the Corps in terms of changing their mind. As a matter of fact, the signs are already up in a place or two. But the actual barrier restraints are not in place yet, and don't know exactly when they will go in place. But all we've asked for is that the decision be delayed until we can vet through either our legislature or through the Corps some alternative methods rather than actually closing off those areas to fishing. And Bobby, did you have any other information to go with that? So,
Think it'd be possible Bobby could give us an update on, after you, in the meeting tonight, maybe tomorrow possibly, since we weren't able to today.
sure.
It'd be great. And have you heard the rumor too that they were even talking about shutting down some of the boat ramps in the vicinity of the dams below the?
Yeah, well, Center Hill in particular. If the lines that are established as for where the barriers will be are based on the hydraulic lines that their engineers had gone out for the last several, well, actually back in the 90s, and had established where those hydraulic lines are, and so it may be a few hundred feet in some places and several hundred feet in others. But in Center Hill, it could very well be that the boat ramp that belongs to the Corps would not be able to be used because it'd be within that area that's the hydraulic area. That's kind of yet to be determined, but that's one of the topics of discussion that the Corps acknowledges that they'll have to look at.
Any questions from the commission? Well, I hope, then you give us an update tomorrow if you would, Bobby, and we'll re-look at that then. Thank you a lot.
Thank you.
Before we finish up with any,
We need to take a break. Don's gotta do his TV.